I'm just interested to know if you have a story, a crazy story, not crazy, but a story about how you met Aretha, if you ever did, or spoke to her, if you ever did.
Yeah, it was pretty wild for me as well. I did this competition called the Thelonious Monk Jazz Piano Competition, and the year that I was competing, she was receiving like a Lifetime Achievement Award, essentially. And the way it works out is one night on in the weekend is the semifinals, and then the next day are the finals. Do you mind meeting someone in the front? And I was like, yeah, sure. And they were like, by the way, it's Aretha Franklin that you're about to meet. And she had asked to meet me after hearing me play. And we just spoke in the lobby, and she was like, yeah, I loved your playing, and I'd love to have your contact information just to stay in touch, and hopefully we could do something together sometime. And she took down my number, and maybe a week later she called me randomly, and throughout the weekend she told people that I was her favorite to win the competition and all this stuff. And so about a week later she called me, and she asked how I was feeling since I won the competition, and if I had any thoughts about my record deal, and if I had a team yet. And she told me, because I didn't have anybody at that point, she told me that my first manager should be my biggest cheerleader, and she was like, my publicist Tracy Jordan I think would be a great manager for you. So
Well, I
she
know Tracy. Tracy used to work at Motown.
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
But I was
yeah.
a music publicist when she was at Motown.
Oh wow, yeah. So Tracy was my first manager through Aretha.
Right.
And
So
she
there's a piece called Aretha Collapses. How do you collaborate with Liesl on a piece that's simply titled Aretha Collapses in a moment that is a pivotal moment within the confines of the film?
That was, such a big moment, because in the film that's where she's at her lowest point, and she has this vision of her mother, and it's like definitely the longest cue in the film, where we start off in this darker place where she is emotionally, and end with this remembrance of her mother. And in a lot of ways, I found the theme. One of the first pieces I wrote was the theme for her mother, which is the first piece of score we hear, and it's after this moment she has with her mother, and you see the love that she has for her. And obviously, her mother isn't present for the rest of the film until this moment where she collapses. And the theme for her trauma is actually that mother theme in reverse, and has like a different feeling to it. So then when we hear her mother theme come back again in this moment where she collapses, it feels like um, uh, there's something that feels, I think, nostalgic about it, because we've heard it earlier in the film, or we heard it in the moment that we were first connected with the mother, and it feels like the first moment of peace, or like almost a sigh of relief in the midst of this darkness. Yeah.
Wow, that's deep. I'm like, I didn't know I was gonna get that deep of an answer. Okay, Kris Bowers, I see you. I see you. So we've talked a little bit about how you collaborated with Liesl to come up with a moment like that with the underscoring. How do you do that when you are the director and the producer and the writer and the subject?
You mean with concerto?
Mm-hmm. How do you do that when you are everybody that you would normally consult with?
One, it's a bit tougher. I think that was why it was also helpful having a collaborator on that in my co-director Ben, as far as reminding me what would be helpful emotionally throughout the arc of the film. But I think that with that piece, it was also a little easier because it was focusing on my grandfather. So it wasn't really so much of my own story as much of it was paying homage to him, and in a way saying thank you to him. And the section in the film where we go through my career and what's happened in my life, that theme that's playing there is the same theme that happened earlier in the film, where my grandfather's talking about family and talking about how his family used to sing on the porch in the South and all this stuff. And so and that both of those themes are actually loosely inspired by How Great Thou Art, which is the song that my grandfather sings at the end of the film. And so that was the original idea, was knowing that we were going to end with How Great Thou Art. And for me personally, knowing that how much that song means to my grandfather, and how much he that's like his go-to song anytime he has to sing in church or sing somewhere. And so when we were looking at the film and looking at this moment where he's talking about singing with his family, I immediately came up with this idea of how I could get the feeling of how great they are, but in something that felt a little bit more cinematic. And then when it goes to the section about me, what was actually helpful is that Ben suggested that I just play that piece without looking at the video, without looking at the picture, and just play the piece emotionally, as this kind of sense of gratitude that we had talked about. And then he and the editor would work to cut the picture to the music to make it fit essentially, which is really helpful for me, because I think that if I had to score my own like life and those images of my life, I think it actually would have been much more difficult. And so it was easier for me just to like play this piece of music, thinking about my family and thinking about my grandfather and thinking about that love essentially, and then have Ben and our editor Lucas cut it all together.
How do you jump from, because your stuff is all over the place. You did Bridgerton, you did Mrs. America, you doing Space Jam, you doing When They See Us, you do all these different things, and they all have a different feel and a vibe to them. What kind of music and what kind of vibe did you go to in collaborating with the director for King Richard?
Fortunately for King Richard, Ray, the director, is somebody I've known for a while. Like I did his first feature film, Monsters and Men, a little while ago. And so, we had found a really interesting sound for that film that I think we both really fell in love with. And
I saw that one too. I haven't seen all your films now. I'm your biggest fan. I'm just saying. Continue.
Thank you. Yeah, and some of the music from Monsters and Men was actually some of the temp music in this, because I think there was a seed of that was helpful texturally. But a lot of it really for me is like, all of these projects, it's all about the relationships and something that I can go to on a personal level emotionally, where Bridgerton is really about love and choosing to love somebody on a daily basis, and choosing to work through difficulties or trauma or any of these different things and continue to learn how to love one another. And I think thinking about that, even outside of the context of the show, is how it might be helpful for me to come up with a theme for that, or same for, When They See Us, thinking about my parents' fear for me as a young Black boy when I was a kid, and what that would be like if something were to happen to me, and looking back on my life and how lucky I feel that something like that didn't happen to me, and how easily it could have, given how innocent those boys were. And then with King Richard, it's really thinking about how much, again, my family has sacrificed for me, I think was something that was really helpful, that is really in line with Richard's story, and what he did for those girls. But I think also just like in our community is something that is seen time and time again, how many people in older generations are just kind of moving through life with this stoicism and taking things on the chin, and just trying to make the things better for the next generation. And I feel like between Richard and Oracene, their mother, it was something that I could immediately relate to. And also just, thinking about what it means for this young girl coming of age. I feel like it's interesting that a lot of my process actually comes from when I worked with Kobe for a while. And one of the things he told me when we first started working together on his documentary Muse, he was like, I want you to think of this project and think about all these things that have happened in my life, but think about what these things mean for you in your own life, and what it reminds you of in your own life and your own struggles and your own journey, and write from that place. And if you write from that place, it'll be good. And I feel like I've taken that ever since then, and thought of all the projects I've worked on where I obviously wasn't a young Black girl playing tennis, but I feel like looking at how it feels to work really hard at something when you're younger, and be really gifted at something, and then have to work to make it your own thing, and take on that responsibility, and all those things I think are things that I could at least emotionally empathize with. Yeah.
Well, Kris, this, I'm a friend and a fan, and just to quote your grandfather, how great thou art, how great thou art. Thank you, Kris. Thank you so much for finally talking to me. This was wonderful. I'm so excited. And the people that watch the Curvy Critic are going to love this. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. And Brianna says hi, by the way, too.
Oh, yeah. Give your boo a hug for me. You tell Bri I said, what's up? All right. Bye.